Good evening. How are you? Well, I'm walking down it looks like a city street, but it's on a ship that's traveling along the East Coast. And the reason I'm talking to you, despite the fact that I'm taking a break from my normal toils on behalf of clients and so forth, I can't remain silent about some things that are going on. We have governments talking to us about how they are concerned about our well-being and our health and our ability at liberty to discuss views. And it's all a lie. And some people take comfort that the words reassure them without considering the acts that contradict them. But the thing that has pushed me to make a comment today is that over the years, I have known a number of people in chronic pain. And among the closest I've ever been to any people was with Lewis and Kristen. And they had a special problem because he was a chronic pain patient and Lewis Ogden needed these opiates and other medications so that he could have a life that meant something. And DEA closed down the doctor that supplied him medication several years ago. And others died within a relatively short period of time because they couldn't get their medications. And he had the same difficulty, but he did manage to get some medications. And Kristen, his wife, was eternally and carefully fixed on how she could help her husband, how she could, within the law, take care of his needs. And she did so valiantly. But now, a couple of days ago, I find out that he's passed. This is a shame and a disgrace. It's a shame and a disgrace because it did not have to happen. It did not have to have happened. And the way it happened is DEA and members of the government see an angle in suggesting opiates are the problem in America, rather than the fact that they won't do traditional law enforcement. I was a federal prosecutor who prosecuted narcotics cases. And my whole life, they've talked about winning the war against drugs. And they've never come close. And they've never come close because as long as there's a demand in this country, and sometimes a legitimate demand for other things, this problem will not be solved. We don't deal with the basic problem in America. And that, well, that's on us because we elect these people and they fail their commitment. They fail their oath. They fail to do what's necessary to protect Lewis Ogden and so many others. So I'm torn inside at the loss of these two fine people working so hard and the unnecessary early death of Lewis. But there are more, plenty more. And it's a government that doesn't give a damn to save them or take care of them. To the extent they say anything, they have these weasel words to make us think they're making a difference when they are not. And that's intolerable. Now, it is increasingly a government policy. We care about children, but they die. We say thoughts and prayers. We don't pass legislation. Somebody dies who's needed medication to survive, hasn't gotten it. They're convinced it's a drug overdose. There's an explanation for everything the government fails to do. In the recent squabble and fight and disagreement with night comedians who sometimes get the point better than the so-called professional journalists. So we have this dichotomy in America between the word of a government that can't be trusted and the devastation that people suffer and feel because the government doesn't do what is necessary. So what are we looking at? Well, there's talk among the comic performers of starting their own channel and then not being subject to what the government might want. But it's really up to us. What if we stop watching ABC or CBS and the others? What if we did the same with newspapers? What if we opened up new avenues of publication ourselves that are beyond the reach of the government? When the government calls upon the FCC to shut someone down, why aren't we suing the FCC head? Tighten the sphincter muscles of this person who feels he can say or do anything and just cut out an entire segment of our society's First Amendment exertions. Why aren't we doing that? Why isn't the Hill calling him to the Hill to explain what he's doing? Why aren't we subpoenaing the records to see where the negotiations were about the mergers that predate the attack on Kimmel? Why are we so passive, letting so much go on that hurts so many people? So I started this thinking about Lewis and Kristen, and they're as appropriate a victim to identify and choose as any other, because once again, the government that can't seem to understand medical science is doing to pain patients what they're prepared to do to children and people in between, the young and the old, who need vaccines. They're prepared to cut out words that we should not use lest we think of the things that they're doing that violate the traditions of America. So I don't want to go on too much, but let me just say that continue what you're doing. That is, do not give up. In my experience, changes occur for good or bad in an instant, and you wondered, how did this not happen sooner? Why did it happen now? That's a good place to be in when we're winning. And right now, there are forces gathering in which people will not stand for what's going on. And so we have to do something about it ourselves. And the something we have to do is to open our mouths, write letters, not buy certain services that sanction these activities, write to the White House, write to members of Congress, appear at rallies, encourage litigation, because we still have the courts on our side, the lower courts. And what we have to do is battle the higher courts from and through the lower courts and through public opinion, because we cannot trust any longer the Supreme Court. We cannot trust the Republicans in government, presently in office or those who would be elected. We cannot trust newspapers sanctioned by Trump. Trump wants to go back to a day when John Adams passed and executed upon the alien and sedition laws. Didn't want anybody from abroad and wanted to cut off people from speaking the truth as if it was an attack on the president. And many years later now, we have Trump who thinks that's a great idea. And he ignores the fact that Adams couldn't get a second term because of those policies. Are we better now than the government then that threw him out, which was dominated by individual elected representatives? And now, who do we turn to? And the answer is we the people. We count on Republicans and Democrats being as afraid of being thrown out of office by us as being pushed into a primary that would put him out of office by Trump. So those are a few thoughts I had. I hope you find those helpful. And I'll be in touch as the weather and inclination allows. All the best. Bye-bye.